All right, guys. What I need you to do right now is make a guess at how old you believe Mr. Johnson to be.
40.
No, just write it down.
Where? Point estimate?
Where it's, for your point estimate. For your point estimate, write down what you think Mr. Johnson's age is. Does everybody have their point estimate written down?
Yeah. Can you tell us?
Oh, not yet. I cannot tell you yet.
Intervals.
Okay, I'm going to go with 52.
Oh, that's what
I mean, I read it in an email 2 weeks ago.
Why was it in an email?
Because I emailed him.
Oh.
Why didn't you just go up to him?
Because we don't know how those interactions go.
Because he and I don't have common planning times, and I don't run into him. He's on the opposite side of the building. Also, I was going to forget the answers to all these other questions. Fair enough?
Did you just email asking him how old are you?
And then all of these other questions. Okay. Okay, so you guys, how many of you feel really good about your answer about Mr. Johnson's age? Does anybody feel like you wish you had some wiggle room?
Yes.
All right, so we have two kinds of estimates. We have point estimates and we have interval estimates. And all an interval estimate does is we attach a margin of error to give us that wiggle room. So for example, what if I said, give yourself plus or minus 2 years? Okay? So if I gave myself plus or minus 2 years, that means the lower boundary of my interval would be 50, and the upper boundary would be 54. You guys give yourselves 2 years. All right, do you feel better about your interval? A little bit? Okay. How many of you feel like you need a wider plus or minus? How wide a plus or minus do you want?
Like 6.
6?
Yeah.
Cool, we'll do 6. So that would put me at 46, right? You know it's bad when I'm like, I need some help with my subtraction, guys. Everybody good? And how many of you feel really good about your interval right now?
100%.
I feel way better about my interval with this than with the previous one. Okay. Now, what if you knew the name? Now I'm looking up the interval, by the way. Now I'm looking up all of the information he responded with.
I'm getting guess 54.
Okay. What if you knew the name of his oldest, or knew the age of his oldest kid?
That would be helpful.
That would be helpful? 21. So his oldest is 21 years old.
So he's like,
Does that
That's helpful.
does that change
yes.
both either your estimate or your margin of error? How many of you feel like you don't need as wide a margin now?
I think it should stay 6. No.
You think it should stay 6?
I think it is.
My
Yeah.
parents are like.
Can we get some more
58.
here?
We're good.
Mess this one
We're
up.
good.
Okay. So the answer to this question doesn't necessarily make you want to change your margin. All right, what if you guys, what if you knew the year he graduated from college?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, the year he graduated from college is 1992.
Oh my. 86.
So he was like 20.
He graduated college before Meister started high school.
He was 23 at the
54
time.
years old.
Shoot.
Just so you guys know, he had his master's degree before Meister finished high school.
He's probably like the same as mom.
Okay, does this change your estimate at all? It doesn't. Does this change your estimate? You can change your estimate now, that's fine.
Okay, my point estimate, I can change it?
You can change it.
I'm going with it.
Okay, so I am not going to change mine. And then what about the wiggle room? How many of you feel like you could have a smaller margin of error now?
Yes.
Yeah? What do you want that margin to be?
Plus 3 or 2.
3.
How about 2.5? Are we feeling better?
Yeah.
All right, now, what if instead of giving you the year he graduated from college, I gave you the year he graduated from high school?
Yes. High school?
So he's 18.
This was the year he graduated from high school.
18-ish.
That's crazy.
So he's my parents.
I was like 3.
By the way, this is his age as of February 15th. I don't know when his birthday is. It is potentially changed.
He's a leap year kind of guy.
He's also a very private guy, so I was shocked that he actually was willing to answer these questions. But so I don't know, like he would never tell the other staff members when it's their birthday, when it's his birthday. You know what I'm saying? That's not his vibe. Okay? But all right, how many of you guys change your estimates knowing this? Is this helpful knowing this?
Yes.
Okay. So now what do you want to make? I'm going to change my estimate because let's see, 1987 is 12 years before I graduated from high school. Because I graduated in 1999. And based on what I think his star sign is, I bet he hasn't had his birthday recently. So I'm going to guess 54. That's what my guess is. And I'll give myself plus or minus 1, right? And are you guys with me? Like, you could use his personality to estimate his star sign, right? You guys, I don't know anything about astrology. I was totally just making that up. But I know the answer, so you know. It is 54. It is 54. He's 54 years old. Okay, but can we talk about the statistical reasoning that's happening here? How many of you felt really good about your first guess? How many of you were really good with your first guess? Close?
I was in that like range.
53 is a great guess. Yeah.
37 at first.
I said 40.
You think he's older than me? Or younger than me?
I've got no idea how age works.
43.
Once you hit 20, I got no clue how old you are.
Okay, come on.
No clue. It's true. I can't tell the difference between.
You can't look at like Mrs. Murphy and know that Mrs. Murphy is younger than I am.
I don't know.
I feel like she's around the same age as you.
She is not.
She's like 4 years younger than you.
I think it's more than that. Miss Lombardi.
Low 30s.
Lombardi's like 39, right? 40.
She just turned 40.
Yeah, so Lombardi's younger than me.
Okay, I could have gotten that one.
Kelsey,
Older.
41.
barely older. Barely older.
Rummer.
No idea.
Nope.
50s.
Probably like 70.
I was gonna say 30.
52.
Oh, I would put him close to my age.
Ballinger.
Rummer?
Ballinger is way younger than you guys think he is.
He's like 60.
He's like 59, right?
He's younger than Richards.
I'm kidding. I'm just kidding.
Richard
He's younger than Richards.
I hope you heard that. He doesn't look very old.
I'm saying he's like
He
58.
doesn't. He doesn't look like he has gray hair. But he doesn't
Is
look
he
like-
not?
Hey, Kev, are you in there?
How old are you?
62.
How old do you think he is?
61.
No way.
No,
No,
he's
like
like
55.
50s.
Is he like 58?
Oh, you can hear him.
Are you in there, Kev?
You can hear him rolling.
I heard him.
You know what would be interesting is having students list the teachers according to age.
That would cause a lot of conflict.
That would cause a lot of people to be angry at students.
Miss
Yeah.
Ingle. How old is Miss Ingle?
I'm saying.
Do you think she's older than me or younger than me?
Older.
Same
Older.
age.
She's
Older.
like
Upper
so
40s.
long, so it's kind of like
She might even be low 50s.
Wait,
I
are
don't
you
know
40?
for sure. I'm 43.
43.
who's the oldest teacher that you know?
Ballinger.
This guy.
What?
No way.
Richards is
Ballinger
older than
looks so much
Ballinger?
older than- No offense, I hope he's not walking by. He probably just goes,
Oh,
He's on the phone. That's why he'll come in later. We'll ask him. He knows the ages of everybody that's up there. You know what I'm
They're all
saying?
retiring in the next 3 years, right?
Mr. Hecker is like the same age as Mr. Richards.
I think he's a year or two younger.
Mr. Ballinger, I think.
Yeah.
When are
And
they
those two are
retiring?
retiring
They're
a
retiring
year
in 2
after
years.
Mr. Ginner and Mr. Richards.
Oh, I didn't.
When are they like 2 years? Either?
Mr. Richards is in 2 years when the sophomores are seniors.
Next year.
It's tough.
Mr. Richards is not. It's changed. He's eligible earlier. He's leaving at the end of next year.
Teach next year and then he's done.
Well, do teachers like sometimes stay longer?
Mr. Whelan did. I probably will.
They like it?
How old is
Still
Mr.
sucks.
Whelan? Like,
60s.
But
He's
then-
in his 70s
Seventy.
and
but
low
then they're paying
70s.
80% of your
Awesome.
salary, so.
Mr. Whelan's gotta be like
Is it the
73.
same? Is
He's a legend.
It depends on how many years you put in.
Still,
Okay. Anyway, we got a little distracted. Poor Savina is going to be like annoyed with watching this video. Okay. You guys, statistically, are you comfortable with me saying the more information we had, the better we felt about our estimate and decreasing that margin of error?
Yes.
Are we good with that idea? And in the statistics world, how do we know more about our population? We take either a sample or a larger sample. So, what we will be doing this year, or this unit, is statistical estimation. And when you do statistical estimation, you start with a point estimate. Okay? And then you also calculate a margin of error. And how big your margin of error is depends on a lot of things. Okay? And calculating the margin is just as important as getting the point estimate. I'd argue more important than getting that point estimate. Okay? The point estimate's easy. You take your sample, you measure your sample. But one of the things we want to remember is samples are always close to our population, but they are not perfect. And in all seriousness, guys,
Samples are not perfect.
I made a button to remind you that samples are, in fact, not perfect. So you have to kind of think through, like, I get my sample, that gives me an idea of where something is. It doesn't tell me exactly. Is everybody good?
Yes.
Okay, so what we call, when we make an interval to make an estimate, we call it a confidence interval. Okay, I want you guys to think about how I talked about that margin of error with Mr. Johnson's age. I said, how many of you feel good about this? How many of you feel confident that his age is actually inside that interval? Do you guys see what I'm saying there? Okay, so that's why we call it a confidence interval. Like, how good do we feel that the actual value we're trying to estimate is inside the interval? Okay? So we're going to start with today estimating a population proportion. In other words, how do I estimate a percent about a population? Proportion, percent are pretty much the same thing, right? A proportion is a percent written as a decimal, okay? All right, and so before we can actually do any of that, there's certain conditions that have to happen. We talked about, remember how that central limit theorem said that if our sample size was big enough, we could, the X bars would be normal. Same thing happens for what we're doing today, okay? All right. Now, we've talked about these before. I'm going to remind you of them. Does anybody remember the difference between a parameter and a statistic?
Sample and population statistics or samples, parameters, population.
Okay, so parameters are measurements of a population. Statistics are measurements of a sample. So we have different symbols for the population proportion and a sample proportion. Okay? So my parameter when we're doing these is P, the percent of my population. Okay? my statistic is funny. It's AP with a hat. Would anybody like to guess the name of this symbol?
P hat.
This is P hat.
No way.
What?
The name of this symbol is P hat. And one of the ways you can tell somebody is close in age to Miss Meister is you would describe something positive as fat with a PH. That's what we used to say in high school.
Oh, like that's a fad.
Like that was like, what's the word you guys use right now? Oh, someone has drip, right?
Like they're tough. Butter.
You get what I'm saying? Is that one butter?
Butter.
Wait, how do you use it?
So we would say, oh, that was fat. It made us really cool.
You make that face.
Fat. We spelled it like this.
What? How have I never
I
heard
think
of this
it's
ever?
fad.
You need to ask your parents about this, okay?
Yeah.
If they ever use the word PHAT, like, oh,
My mom definitely did not use that word. There's no way.
I don't know.
She used fat.
this is what we said. I don't know what to tell you.
Why did your voice change?
Okay.
That's so bad.
All right. So, some other symbols we need to know. Z. This Z is very much related to the Z's we were using last unit. Okay? All right. And then E is going to stand for our margin of error. So, our margin of error is going to equal is going to equal Z times the square root of P hat Q hat over N. Our point estimate is going to be P hat. Everybody good? All right. Our interval estimate will be P hat plus or minus Z times P hat Q hat over N. Now, if I gave you just this formula, how could we look at this formula to find the margin of error?
This is devastating.
Just take out the plus or minus.
Yeah, it's the margin of error is what we plus or minus, yes? Okay? So this is my error. This is my margin of error.
What is Q hat?
Q hat is 1 minus P hat. Remember, if P hat, like Q is like,
Okay, I didn't know if it was.
yep, they're related. Everybody good?
My mom said, "Oh yeah, she definitely used fat." She's like,
So yeah, because it was so cool.
yeah, she's like, "Oh heck yeah, it means cool."
You guys,
Oh, heck yeah.
you want to make somebody laugh? Belk would die if you said, wow, that's pretty PHAT.
Spell it out.
Well, if you say fat, he might not remember it. But if you said PHAT,
Yeah, what? That's like
okay.
Yeah.
easy.
In the 90s or what?
Yeah,
Okay.
mid to late 90s. Okay, you guys,
It's that is.
when we talk through finding our margin of error, okay, when we're trying to, who's the old,
For me.
yeah, who's the oldest teacher in the building? Is it you? If you don't count Wheeland, I mean, it's definitely Wheeland, otherwise they're sweary, but if you don't count them,
Chris Frank.
oh, yeah, that's probably is. But then it's you, right?
Yeah, probably.
You want new glasses, Mr. Richter?
I did. Thank you for
How old is,
Those are
how
PHAT.
old is Hecker?
Yeah, those are PHAT.
It's what?
Those are pretty
I was
fat.
teaching them, we're talking about P hats, so I was telling them about how in the 90s we used to call things fat.
Yeah, fat. PHAT, fat.
That's so fat, dude.
Um,
How old are you?
56.
So you're my dad's age.
Yeah, I'll be 57 in May. But I don't. I know I'm. Oh, you know what? Ginner may be a year older than me.
Because he took a year longer in college, maybe because of wrestling.
Uh,
He wrestled a year longer.
no, actually, no, I'm probably older than you. Because I took longer to get out of college than they did. Because my movement in college. So,
Understood.
nine universities get.
Okay, you guys.
No, I got it.
Are you with me that all of these values, if you have your sample, you'd be able to find p hat and q hat and n, right? Once you have your sample.
Yes.
And this p hat is also from the sample. So the only thing not from the sample is this z thing. And this z is related to how confident we want to be in our answer. It is impossible to be 100% confident. Why do you guys think it's impossible to be 100% confident?
Because that's dumb.
Because you beat the goat.
Samples are not perfect.
Because no matter what, like it's always possible that you got a really, really wackadoodle sample. That's always a possibility. We need to accept that now. Okay? So, what we do is we say we're okay with being a certain percentage confident. Okay? And the margin of error has two components of it. The part that comes from the sample and the part that comes from the level of confidence. Okay? And so if we want to find the z-score for our level of confidence, what we do is think through z-scores, which remember that standard normal curve, the z-scores had a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1. And we are looking for the middle 90% of the possible samples. So my middle area will be 0.90. And we want to find that boundary. That's essentially what we're doing. Okay? So if I want the middle 90%, how could I find that? Inverse norm. Now, because I know things that you do not know yet, I want us all to go through the reasoning process as if our calculators don't let us say center. Because I know what's coming, because there's going to be a time where you won't be able to just put in center. Okay? You guys, if I can only put in the left-hand area, which is going to happen soon, okay? What would the left-hand area of that boundary be?
1.28.
Wait,
Point oh five.
you all got me confused.
What would this area be?
0.05.
0.05. 0.05.
That's what I meant.
If we had to think that out loud, are you guys with me that the combined tails
Oh, that makes
have to equal 10%?
that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay?
And then
All right.
it'll just be
It's just the
left.
negative and the positive.
So essentially, to find that tail, you do 1 minus your confidence over 2. 1 minus will tell you, hey, that's the outer 10%, and then you cut it in half. Okay? Now, how many boundaries are there for the middle 90%?
What?
Say that again.
What?
How many boundaries do you need
2.
for the middle 90%?
2.
2. You need the lower and the upper. So, what are they?
Negative and positive 1.645.
Oh.
Remember the other day when we were doing the standard normal stuff and you guys were like, how did you know that, Ms. Meister?
And X was positive.
That it was this answer. Oh, yeah, thank you. Now, these are the z's, right? So we essentially are finding that z is equal to plus or minus 1.644. Or 45, wherever it rounds. Okay? Do we really need to think through that plus or minus? Well, what do we do in our formula with the z-score? We
Plus or minus.
plus or minus it. Everybody good?
Yes.
So typically, we just write down the positive value for z. If you wrote the plus or minus, I don't care. Everybody good?
Yep.
All right. So you guys tell me, what is the z-score for 98% confident?
Negative.
Negative 2.326.
If this is 0.98, what are my tails?
0.01.
And you said you got 2.326.
326.
But remember, it's both positive and negative
Yeah.
technically, so we,
Yeah, this was negative and then, yeah, I got you.
don't say Plinus. I hate it so much. I think students hear Plinus and they think a single answer, not two different ones. So this is not my favorite. She and I have fought over it. Don't worry. And then go ahead and do the 99%. You guys think I could figure this out in my head?
No.
Please don't do
I
it.
never checked, but I think I can do it.
Negative 2 point. You already do it?
It was like 2.54, I think.
2.576.
Oh, 2.58. Okay.
You go to inversion one. That's how you do it.
It's 0.005, right?
0.005 is what you would put in, yeah. All right. How are we feeling?
Good.
Great.
This is amazing.
Okay, great. Let's make an estimate. So as we do this, guys, I'm going to put the formula that is on your formula sheet on the side here. This is what's on your formula sheet.
We could draw more from this, but if it's 99, it would have to be, wait, 1.005, because both have to be 0.01.
All right. Hey, what's the point estimate, you guys?
966.
And it is not 964.
95% of that.
It's not, no, it's 964 out of 1,100. Because remember, what we're trying to estimate is the proportion, the percent of people
90 cents.
who are pro Buckeye. You guys, what is 964 out of 1,100?
Did you say 7?
0.87?
Yeah, 0.876.
0.876, perfect. Okay. All right. So, guys, what would my Z equal if I wanted to be 80% confident?
Plus or minus 1.282.
Let's see. What- This would be 0.8. What would that make the tail?
0.1.
Oh,
And you got 1.28?
What's the point in writing it in the tail? Like, what do we use that for?
we're gonna need to later on.
Okay.
Later, like next week,
Okay.
we're going to have to, you're going to have to do something slightly different, and you won't, wait. Yeah, next week. I had to look at what, if we got to it this week. Next week, you're going to have to do it on without,
Okay.
yeah, in a different way, but same reasoning. So I want to practice the reasoning.
This has 7 and 8.
It's a 7 and 8. Okay, are you guys with me? That if I think through that formula, then I'm going to have p hat plus or minus 1.28. And then let's see. P hat was 0.876. What would that make Q hat?
1.124.
0.124. We're just doing 1 minus that 0.876, yeah? All over
No?
1,100. And then we're taking the score. Now,
So wait, does 95% have anything to do with this?
oh, you guys, I got a typo here. That should be 80%. We never did a 95%. But it doesn't affect it. Everybody good?
Yeah.
Okay. And from this, just plug it into the calculator.
And the answer will be just
So you're going to do 0.876 minus the whole that whole thing, and 0.876 plus the whole thing. I'm okay with some people doing one side and some people doing the other.
Strawberry lemonade.
What are we getting, Neil?
Point eight 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 or 0.889 for the plus.
Okay.
No?
It's different.
No, that's good.
No. For the plus, I got 0.863. For the minus, I got 0.889.
I did plus. 0.876.
You used the negative z. So you said 0.863 was the lower? Is everybody good with this? Okay. You guys. It turns out there is a calculator shortcut to get here. Would you guys like to see it?
Yes.
Okay. I would like you to, okay, in your calculators, hit stat. And I would like you to go over to where it says tests. We are doing, this isn't a test, this is a interval. Okay? As you look at this, you might see a z interval here, but what I need you to see is that there's also a z interval here. You guys with me? And what is our interval trying to estimate? A proportion. So I need you to pick the one proportion z interval. Okay? So that is A. All right. Then it's going to ask you three things. X and N.
Wait.
Does yours not ask you that? Nat, does yours not ask you for this?
It's asking Z interval, T interval.
Yeah, you got to pick one prop z interval. Now, does it ask you for this stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. You guys, the X and the N are the values that make your p hat. So X is essentially standing for your number of successes, which in this case was 964. And then for the N, we're going to put in. And for the confidence level, 0.8.
Oh.
Because it's an 80% confident, yes? Is everybody with me?
So,
And then I go down to calculate.
why do we use
You don't, is what I'm trying to point out. There are things, there's ways I could ask about it where you need to understand where the margin of error comes from.
What about the negative? I mean, yeah,
What about what?
the negative for this.
Writing down.
Because we only got the positive answer.
No, the 0.863 was the negative answer.
I got my positive answer.
only
What did I get?
doesn't
No,
use
I got
this?
0.889 for
None.
That's all you got.
one prop Z
Why did I get an answer at all?
Wait, did you do one prop z interval or one prop z test?
One prop
Where's
the
that? Tell me out.
That's exactly what
Where we go?
Maybe I do
prop
mine.
Z is.
Nah.
Let me do
Can
mine.
help me?
Oh.
Cause I was deaf last.
They literally gave me another.
Come on.
No.
Get back over here. That got me no answer, so.
Oh, your confidence level is the 80, would be 80% confidence.
I did mine right actually, so.
Chocolate?
Okay.
we get the same thing.
Cool. Awesome.
Okay.
Everybody good?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Press enter.
We were dogging on it.
No, press enter then you're only possible.
You guys, if I wanted to use this interval to get my margin of error, what would I do?
Just take off the 0.876 and.
So you have two options to find the margin of error. I could either do 0.889 minus 0.876, or I could do 0.876 minus 0.863. Either of those kind of undoes adding and subtracting the margin of error.
Wait, where'd you get those numbers?
The intervals, the endpoints of the interval, and then the p hat.
Oh, it's just like, so you're subtracting something from the p hat or the p hat from the lower.
Oh,
Yeah, it's either the upper boundary minus p hat or p hat minus the lower boundary.
okay.
All right, and let's see. You guys, I'm getting 0.013. Does that feel right?
Yeah.
So that was my margin of error. Okay, guys, another thing of noting, the width of the interval is equal to 2 times that margin of error. All right, we will pick up from here tomorrow.